Welcome to another episode of This Is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast. Season 4, Episode 40. Your safe space to discuss sports, politics, social issues, and even religion, where we will take it all very seriously, but not too seriously. Another episode of Two Idiots Discuss Sports, Major League Baseball playoff preview, with a little bit of a twist, because the playoffs started early this year, the Braves and the Mets having to play a doubleheader after the season was over in order to determine between the Braves, the Mets, and the Diamondbacks who was going to make the wild card. That made for one of the most memorable afternoons in baseball playoff history. We have my buddy Brian on to discuss all the trials and tribulations that we both went through in what was probably a 40-minute span. Thank you all. To my loyal listeners, if you are new to the podcast, please like, subscribe, thumbs up, 5-star, write a review, send to friends and enemies far and wide. This Is Why I Don't Vote podcast is on Patreon. If you like what you hear, please consider supporting.
Act 1. Two Idiots Discuss Sports, Major League Baseball 2024 Playoff Elimination Games.
Because you know it was coming, dear listener. You know we had to. Once again, Two Idiots Discuss Sports, Major League Baseball Playoff Edition. And this one is unique in that the teams that you know that we both love, Brian and I, the New York Metropolitans, the Atlanta Braves, because of weather, because of fate, they had to play a doubleheader after the regular season was technically done in order to determine between the Braves, the Mets, and the Diamondbacks who was going to the playoffs. One of the more memorable days in Major League Baseball, at least in this century. Brian, go ahead and say hello to the people and tell us how you felt in the 9th inning of Game 1 of that series between the Braves and the Mets on Monday.
Well, Patrick, thanks for having me on as always, and good afternoon, good evening, peoples, wherever it is you are listening to Two Idiots right now. Monday was a day for the ages that I really wish never would have happened in the first place. It was emotional. It was a roller coaster. It was depressing. It was exuberating. It is what it is. You know, the last week of the season, you know, you and I had conversations before Tuesday. You know, the playoffs started Tuesday. Mets and Braves. Braves were down 2 games at that point in time, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Going into that series. You know, it's, head-to-head, Braves sweep. They're up 1. They split. They're down 1. Braves do a great job of winning that first game, and then the weathers came. And for those of you in places, hope all are safe and well. I know that many of our listeners are in regions that got affected, so our thoughts and prayers with you guys.
Definitely.
But, the weekend came. Kansas City came in, and Kansas City came into Atlanta also needing to win to make the playoffs. So Braves win 1, rained out for 2. Great news is you get to reset the starting lineup, the starting pitching. Turns out that Chris Sale, who is the presumptive Cy Young winner in the National League.
I would agree with this.
The first Triple Crown winner since, I think, 2004. Am I overstating that a bit? Something along those lines, maybe 14. It's been a minute, but first Triple Crown winner, 35 years old. Dude came in. Seems like we traded him for a cup of coffee and a stick of bubble gum.
Yeah.
But it's, he became the ace in a season where the Braves played 6 innings with their starting lineup on opening day. The catcher went out. You end up having Acuna go out again. You get Riley with a broken wrist. Albies goes out twice. He comes back. Michael Harris is out for an unknown period of time with a grade 2 hammy. He finally comes back. So it's literally walking wounded. Braves picked up 3 guys through August, even after the deadline, 3 guys that have been DFA'd by playoff teams, literally an island of misfit toys going out on the field every night, and somehow, some way, they were still in it. They go into the weekend, they reset the lineup. All of a sudden, Chris Sale, they decide that they're going to hold off on Chris Sale until the elimination game. He's much more comfortable with flexibility. He'll take the ball any day he gets. Max Fried gets the start Friday because he needs to be more regular schedule. They win Friday. They lose Saturday, which then means madness ensues. Things happen where the Mets, the Braves, and the Diamondbacks are all square going into Monday. You and I both hoped that Monday never needed to happen. This doubleheader that got postponed the week before never would have happened because you've got 18 innings before you fly somewhere to go to a playoff series. Each team has to win one to advance. The Braves' offense has been stagnant, to say the least, throughout the season. They scored 10 runs in a game, and then all of a sudden they don't score any for 3 games. So it unproductive, unreliable. You're wondering what the heck's going to go on. So game 1 starts. Things start out well. Braves are up 3-0 early. It remains 3-0. It's kind of a ho-hum game. I can't sit down in the house. I'm sitting there watching this game. Can't seem to sit down. They're up 2 after 3. They get another home run in the 6th. Nothing happens in the 7th. Everything's cruising. The Braves rookie pitcher, Spencer Schwellenberger, Swelly Balls, we like to call him. Swelly Balls is up there, and he's dealing.
Yes.
Absolutely dealing through 7. He's off the charts. He pitches 7 innings. He's got no earned runs. He's got 5 strikeouts. I think 3 hits at that point in time, maybe 2 hits at that point in time. And comes out in the 8th. You got to send him back out there. He's dealing. Why waste the bullpen? Because you got another game regardless.
That's right.
Even if you win, you still got to play another game. You don't want to waste a bullpen if you do happen to lose. You got to get that ready for it. And then one batter in, he gives up a long single.
Double.
He gets yanked. And then madness ensues.
Yeah, he gave up a double. It wasn't a single. It was that at-bat to Tyrod Taylor. Editor's note, Tyrone Taylor. It was 11 pitches, and Taylor ends up hitting a double, and they pulled him. He had not, this is one of the things that I wanted to note, because people were like, well, they shouldn't have brought him back for the 8th. He hadn't thrown that many pitches. Well, that was one of the things that I was most frustrated by as a Mets fan. I'm like, work this man into the count. Make a kid, that's what he is, because he's not a 10-year veteran, make him throw lots of pitches. Stop swinging at all of these, you could tell the Mets batters were pressing. He hadn't thrown that many pitches. At that point in the game, I was fully confident that if he had continued and Taylor hadn't had such a great at-bat, he may have had an 11-pitch 8th inning to finish the 8th inning, and then we got to face your closer, Iglesias.
Exactly. And, he had 83 pitches through 7. He's on his way to and Max Fried almost did this on Friday, to pitching what's called a Maddox, where you pitch a complete game with less than 100 pitches.
Yep.
Max, I think, had 83 going into the 9th on Friday and had something similar happen, had a long at bat. But you're right. Taylor gets an 11-pitch at bat, long double off the wall. Can't recall what happens the next one, single, walk, whatever it might happen after somebody comes in. I can't even recall who's come in at that point in time. My brain is mush since then. I think it was trauma that made me black out for a minute. But the madness just ensues. As you know, Mets put up 6 runs in the top of the 8th. And I'm thinking, holy shit, here we go again. The offense has been doing nothing. They're on life support the entire time. They can't hit a ball. Baseball's hard. It's hard to hit a baseball.
That's right.
They make it extremely hard.
Yeah.
So they put up 6. I sit down. I'm like, this thing's done. We're out. We're down 6-3 with 2 left. Then all of a sudden, 4 runs in the bottom of the 8th. Holy shit! I'm back on my feet again. This is awesome. I'm sweating like a I don't even know. Nerves are going, palms are sweaty, watching the game, can't sit down. And then it happens again. Someone gets on base. Your MVP favorite. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think you think it's going to happen. But
unfortunately not.
Lindor comes up. Right. Lindor comes up, hits a 2-run shot in the ninth. We'd already we brought the closer in the eighth. He didn't do anything. So you got to pull him. Why? Because you're going to need him again. Yeah. You're going to need him in 8 and 10 innings in 3 hours. So you can't run him through an inning and a half like they've done throughout the season, or 2 innings. So you got to pull him. You got to go into the bullpen again. Pierce Johnson comes in to start the ninth. You're asking guys to do things that they've not done before. You're asking him to close the game. He gives up a hit right off the bat. Or was it a walk?
No, it was a hit. Marte got a single out to pass short, and then Lindor hit the homer.
Yeah, Lindor hits the homer. Braves are down again. It's 8-7 going into the bottom of the ninth, and the bottom of the lineup's up. Game over. Right? We're done. At that point in time, you're just like, let's get to the next game. The emotional roller coaster that was game one, it was a game for the ages. And it wasn't that until the last 2 innings. Right. So it was 2 innings for the ages. But it was, announcers are going crazy. I was listening. I know this was a national game on ESPN. I was watching the Braves feed. I'm assuming you were watching the Mets feed.
Yes.
And not the national game. But announcers are going nuts. And all of a sudden, it all comes crashing. Braves turn around. Mets celebrate on the field. Thankfully, coverage goes off. I don't see any of it. I'm sure you watched it.
Oh, yeah. Because I had the New York feed.
It's 40 minutes to game 2. So from that point, I'm going to flip it back to you. Tell me about your roller coaster.
So this is in the middle of my workday, and I had 2 projects that I was working on that took precedence, as much as I hate to say that, but we're all grown-ups. We all have to do work. So I'm working, and I have the game on in the background. And I'm getting progressively more frustrated. I just had a bad feeling about that kid. The last time he pitched against the Mets was in New York, and he just pitched a gem. They couldn't hit him. And so I was like, well, first of all, I don't like this matchup, given the way it went last time. He's having a great season. And sure enough, through 3 or 4 innings, it's happening all over again. So I'm in this mindset where I've kind of resigned myself. Well, I've got to do this work. So I've got to focus on my work. And I don't know why, Brian, but I kind of churn through it. And I get back where I'm able to focus more on the game in the 6th inning. So I'm sitting down. It's 2-0. Mets go through. They don't do anything. Solo shot. Profanities. Very, very... I almost resigned myself that, okay, we're going to have to try to see what we can get in game 2. Because I was feeling probably the way that you felt when that lineup came out in game 2. I was thinking, all right, well, if the Braves win, they've got to fly somewhere. The next day, they're not putting everybody out because that's a banged-up team, just like everybody is at the end of a season. But you mentioned it earlier. I think it's prescient that you did, that the Braves have suffered so many injuries. So, I don't care what anybody in Arizona says. I'm going to get to that. But neither team was going to put out their best lineup with their best pitcher in that second game. So I come back into my office after that home run, take a breath, send out an email, come back, because the beginning of the 8th inning, it's getting more to the heart of the order. And I'm like, all right, well, if anything's going to happen, I'm going to watch it happen now. Because if he blows through the heart of the order in the 8th inning, we're in trouble in the 9th. And that at-bat by Tyrod Taylor. Editor's note, Tyrone Taylor. Was one of the best at-bats I can remember watching for a Mets team that I actually liked. I mean, as that at-bat progressed, I'm like, damn, dude, how many pitches has he thrown? Like, this is amazing. This is what we should have been doing to this guy in the 4th inning, not in the 8th inning. And then he gets the double, and they pull him, and I'm like, all right, all we have to do is put up a run in the 8th inning and at least make it plausible that we can do something in the 9th against Iglesias. I don't want to have to score 3 runs against Iglesias in the 9th. And then, like you said, and because, of course, I've watched this now 3,000 times over the course of the last 48 hours, the Mets got 5 straight hits. There wasn't a walk in there. So off of the guy that they brought in, they got a couple of hits off of him, and then Schnicker goes to Iglesias, and I'm like, all right, well, we've got to get 1 hit off Iglesias to tie this game. That's all we need to do. And we shell Iglesias. We shell him.
Yep.
And end up scoring that 6. So I'm on top of the world, as you will recall. I sent you some texts. I know that you were not happy to see them. You were not welcoming of those texts. But here's the funniest...
no communication whatsoever.
Yeah. So here's the funniest part about that interaction between you and I was that they bring in Matan in the bottom of the 8th, and he just isn't sharp. He gets 1 out, so it's 1 out, and I believe it was men on 1st and 3rd with 1 out. So I'm thinking, okay, bring in our closer so that we can get into a double play and end the game, and we're in the playoffs, and then whatever happens, happens. Don't care about the next game. I mean, it'd be great if we won, but who cares? Yeah. And just the absolute disgust. And I'm blanking on his name. I'm so excited right now. I'm sweating. The name of our closer.
Diaz.
Yeah, so Diaz comes in, and in one of the just cruelest twists of fate, he doesn't cover first base when Pete Alonso makes an absolutely fantastic play on what would have been a double down the first base line. He dives, gets the ball. Diaz doesn't cover. That would have ended the game if he had covered. He doesn't cover. He ends up walking the next batter. Grand slam.
Yep.
Absolutely an utter... I'm sorry, it wasn't a grand slam. It was a bases clearing double. It was a bases clearing double. Absolutely and utterly disgusting. I wanted to choke this. It wasn't so much that Diaz he wasn't sharp and that he gave up runs. It was that not only was he not sharp, but he pulled one of the stupidest stunts. And I'm listening to the Mets broadcast. So Ron Darling is losing his shit. Ron Darling is basically like, there is no bigger betrayal of a first baseman than a pitcher, particularly a relief pitcher, who just loses his head and thinks all he has to do is stand on the mound and throw the ball and doesn't embrace the part of the game that is fielding and covering the bag after you make a great play. So that's all the Mets announcers, Keith Hernandez, Ron Darling, they're going on and on about that. And I texted you, I was like, but for the fact that Diaz just signed a 5-year extension last year, this motherfucker would be gone. Right? Like, that's the kind of thing where if you lose that type of baseball game over that type of play, given all the other ups and downs they've had with Diaz, he's gone. They're looking either to just let his contract expire or trade him. At this point, given what happened, top of the 9th, here comes Marte, single. Here comes Lindor, hero, absolute hero, Mets MVP for sure, hitting that 2-run shot. And here's one of the things that I wanted to mention, and I wanted to get your input. Carlos Mendoza, I think he's done an absolutely fantastic job with this baseball team all throughout the course of the season. I think he is a gem of a manager. The Mets got lucky that they were able to get him from the Yankees. He lets Diaz come back out to get his save. What did you think about doing that after he had thrown at least 23 pitches from my recollection? He had never thrown that many to get a save in 2 innings. He's now going to throw upwards of 30-some pitches in order to get this save. What did you think about Mendoza letting Diaz come out to get that save in the bottom of the ninth?
My thought process was, holy shit, we're done. Yeah, it was dumb. Like, it was lazy. It wasn't as dumb as him having his glue-covered litter box hands earlier in the season. But it was dumb. It gave us a shot, right? Ozzie comes in. I got a buddy of mine that's at the game, bought a $10 standing room only ticket. And he said the stadium was louder than he had ever heard in his life. And we've been to playoff and World Series games there. It was louder and more explosive than he had ever heard. If you watch the broadcast, the camera was shaking.
Yeah.
From that perspective because of the crowd. It's, Ozzie hits that shot, and it looks like it's gone. It hits about halfway up the wall, but, bases clearing. I'm jumping up and down. I got a dog that's looking at me like, what the hell are you doing? My wife's just laughing on the couch. But Diaz comes out in the ninth, and I'm already a little despondent because I know what's coming up. I know we've got Eli White coming up, who's only in the game. He came in as a substitute for Jorge Soler because Jorge Soler don't play no good defense.
Yeah, that's the truth.
So Eli White comes in, and he's quick. So I believe he came in maybe even as a pinch runner at one point. Ramon Laureano's coming up after him, who's done a good job this year. He's one of the cast-offs, I think, from the Guardians, if I'm not mistaken. And Travis d'Arnaud's coming up, who got a walk-off on Friday.
Yeah.
And, I misspoke earlier. The Braves didn't lose on Saturday. The Royals clinched on Saturday. They won, but they clinched. So Sunday, they weren't going to bring out much. Braves didn't do anything anyway. But Diaz coming out or staying in the game, like, we're cooked. We're just done. If he gets his head out of his ass, which he did, we're done. He throws, I don't even know how many pitches. I'm looking at this, 3-2, 1-2, 2-2. I don't know. What do you throw? Like 15 pitches in the ninth inning, plus or minus? A line out, a strikeout, and a grounder. And then all of a sudden it's done. And as they say, the proverbial air comes out of the sails. It's going into game two. You got to win. You just wasted, 5 pitchers?
Yes.
At that point in time, 4 in the bullpen. Joe Jimenez, who's the eighth inning guy, came in, gave up 3 earned runs. He didn't get an out, for Christ's sakes. Iglesias comes in, gets 1 out, gets 2 earned runs, and then Bummer comes in to finish off the 8th. To clean up the slop and the mess that it is. So Diaz coming in, I'm like, we're cooked. It's not the heart of the lineup. There have been struggles. Some of these have come up big. You got Travis d'Arnaud coming in. But once those first 2 outs are in the books, Diaz is probably feeling a little bit more confident. Right? To your point earlier, whoever wins this game, they're going to pitch a backup shortstop for 7 innings the next game.
Yes.
Because you're not going to waste any other pitchers. You got a game the next day. But now, and if the Mets had lost game 1, my thought was, Mets are going to be the Mets, right? They're going to go lull Mets again and Mets it up, right? They're going to be puckered hard if they lose game 1.
Yeah.
Because they were up 2 games a week ago, and oh, dear Lord, here it comes again. But they didn't. Lindor comes in strong, gets the 2-run shot, wins the game. And I'm sitting here. I go back to my computer at that point in time. I had a couple calls come in. I had 2 calls come in the bottom of the 9th inning. I'm like, I ain't answering these. So, coverage goes off. I get 40 minutes. I go return some phone calls, but I am just so emotionally drained at this point. It's ridiculous. We're watching a sport on television. But the emotions that were through this, those that are fans that are out there, fan is short for fanatic. It's what we do. And if your team is has their back up against the wall like a newbie prisoner coming in on day one, you got to get this thing done.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into game two. And, my thought was at that point, yeah, you know what? They're not going to throw their top pitcher up there, but now all of a sudden you're puckered up. And you got to win to get in. And it's do or die at this point in time. So it was a tough one, man. It was a game for the ages. It was an inning for the ages, or I guess 2 innings for the ages, but it was a good one. It was an instant classic. It was, Braves were on the wrong side of it, but it was definitely an instant classic.
Well, I thought it was brilliant to let Diaz go back out there. If you're going to do anything in the playoffs, you're going to need him. I think he knew he screwed up, not so much in that he pitched poorly, he gave up some runs, but he didn't cover the first base bag, which would have ended the game. You've got to build his confidence back up. That's exactly what happened. He came out. And after he got that first out, he did not throw, if my recollection serves, I don't think the first pitch that he threw was a strike. After he got the first out, he went up 1-2 on the next batter. It was a first pitch strike, and I was like, all right, now he's getting back into his rhythm. Closes out the game. They celebrate. I knew going into game two that they weren't going to play Lindor. I'm not kidding. I got probably 10 different texts from 10 different people calling me a fucking asshole because the Mets weren't going to play Lindor. As you probably knew, Lindor was hurt. And that's the reason why they brought themselves up in Acuna. We got ourselves in Acuna, and he played amazing down the stretch. But they weren't going to play Lindor in a meaningless game given the fact that he was playing hurt in the first place. I mean, one of the reasons why I think he deserves the MVP, even though I don't think he's going to win it, is that he came back where his team needed him to win a game in order to get into the playoffs, and he played very well, not only at the plate, but in the field when he's not 100%. So he got that second game off. You're right. They went down and grabbed a pitcher from the bullpen and let him, and he didn't pitch very well, but he didn't pitch poorly. And it was a very pedestrian second game. I think the final was 3-0. I could have gone, Brian, after that game one and practiced like it was 1990 high school football. I was that enthused. I mean, I was like, I didn't have a pain in my body. I wasn't tired. I wasn't frustrated by anything. I just couldn't believe it. That a team that I actually like, a Mets team that is actually likable, in 2 innings did, I don't want to say it's unthinkable, but given the way, again, Schellenbach was pitching, I was not optimistic. And before you knew it, the Mets had fought their way into the playoffs. And again, I love the story that you tell about the Braves, how many injuries that they suffered. They have been steady all season. You and I have discussed this personally and on the podcast. This is a Mets team that was 9-19 in May and had to have a players-only closed meeting because they were so bad, which is 9 times out of 10, or probably 19 times out of 20, the death knell of a team. When they have to have a players-only meeting, shit's going bad. And they turned around. They actually turned the whole team around, and they were at one point 25-5 leading into the last week of the season. So, yeah, it was a lot of elation. I did not begrudge at all the Braves winning the second game. I think the Mets, they put out a capable team. Their pitcher pitched well enough. You just didn't see any real dedication from any of the batters in that second game. I mean, and maybe you could even say that the first game, because Schellenbach pitched so well. But, the Braves are now in. The Mets are now in. The Braves have to go to San Diego, which I think is actually the tougher of the 2 draws simply because of the way it happened. You're in Atlanta, Georgia. You're playing 2 baseball games on a Monday. One team has to go to Milwaukee. One team has to go to San Diego. Regardless of the caliber of the teams, the harder trip is the trip to San Diego, right?
100%. I mean, so the Braves end up winning game 2. It was one of the most anticlimactic games I've ever watched. Yes, they still needed to get in. Yes, there was interest. I still watched the game. It was in no way the way I was in game 1. It seemed very anemic overall.
Yes. Great word.
And here's the kicker. So the Braves are holding Chris Sale, their ace, their presumptive Cy Young winner and soon-to-be Triple Crown winner.
Yeah.
They're holding him for an elimination game. Well, you lose game 1, what do you have? You've got an elimination game. And then all of a sudden, word gets out, Chris Sale, back spasms.
Yeah.
Old guy, bad back. A man who the Braves have been at early on in the season. He's been riddled with injuries the past 5 years. I don't know the past 5, but a lot, right? Maybe 3 out of the 4 of the past 5, plus or minus.
Yeah.
Riddled with injuries. He comes in. He's 35 years old. The Braves were running a 6-pitcher rotation the entire year up until about August. Why? To give them more rest. So Chris Sale wouldn't have 1,000 innings under his belt because they're going to need him for October. In order to need him for October, you have to get to October. So they're holding him for game 1 or the elimination game, which obviously that's game 2. Back spasms happen. Holy shit, what are you going to do? I get word from buddies of mine, Grant Holmes is pitching. One might ask, who's Grant Holmes?
That's a good question.
I asked the same question about 4 months ago. Who's Grant Holmes? Otherwise known as Eastbound and Down, Kenny Powers. A pitcher who had been in the minor leagues for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Has curly hair down to his shoulder blades, but came in this year. He's always essentially, I want to call him a 30-year-old rookie. I don't know exactly how old he is, but he's essentially a rookie coming in. And all of a sudden, he finds out, I believe 10 minutes before game time, that he's starting an elimination game. He's 28 years old. He's starting an elimination game to get to the playoffs.
Wow.
What does he do? Grant Holmes comes in, pitches his ass off for 4 innings.
Yeah, he pitched well.
7 strikeouts, one walk, 1 hit, and that's all you needed. You didn't need him to pitch 7 innings. He had pitched, I think, over the weekend at some point in time. I don't know if it was on Sunday, but he had pitched over the weekend at some point in time in relief. I think long relief. So you don't need a lot out of him. You're kind of throwing a bullpen game, but this is an elimination game. And you've got a bullpen game going. Why? Because if you win, you need starters for game 1 of a wild card series, which starts tomorrow at 8:30.
Yeah.
So this game goes, we start at 5 o'clock or so, plus or minus. Game's over 8:30. Good news, Braves win, celebrations happen. Not the dugout, what am I talking? The locker room celebration going crazy. It's awesome. Michael Harris, center fielder, should be Gold Glove, center fielder, born and bred Atlanta guy, literally in an Atlanta Falcons helmet with goggles on during the celebration on Instagram Live. It's hilarious. But that celebration's going. You've got all the interviews going through the season. Brian Snitker says, enjoy this. It's never guaranteed, which is absolutely true. But you got to get on an airplane and fly 4 hours in about 3 hours. And not only do you have to do that, before you got to the ballpark, if you won, you were going one of 2 places. You were either going to Milwaukee for 3 days, or you were going to San Diego for 3 days, and then LA for a week and a half. So you got to pack for a week to get on that plane. You've got the emotion of it. You got a late flight. You got a 4-hour flight. The celebration's probably still going on another hour or two into the flight. You get in late. Then you got game one of a wild card series starting at 8:30. And that's where we land yesterday. Who do they pitch? Well, you couldn't throw Chris Sale, who you were hoping for, right? The hope was Braves win game one of the doubleheader. You know, the third string shortstop pitches 7 innings, and you save Chris Sale for game one. This is awesome. Chris Sale game one, Max Fried game two. Well, Kenny Powers pitches game two. They end up winning. Chris Sale, old back spasm, unavailable. Did not make the wild card roster. Left off. Unavailable the entire series.
Ouch.
What do? Right. What do? They go to AAA and find a kid by the name of A.J. Smith-Shawver, who's got good stuff, not awesome control. I saw a statistic yesterday after he gave up his first home run in the first inning in the postseason in his career. He's got about 5 1/3 innings pitched and 4 home runs. Not awesome. He gets yanked after, I don't think he makes it through the first inning. No, he does. He goes after the second. He gets yanked early. And the rest, as they say, is history. You know, the offense goes anemic again, doesn't do anything, and here we are down 1-0 going into game 2 of a wild card series at San Diego, whilst your Mets, who win game 1 and throw the fourth string shortstop out, lose game 2, didn't put up forth a whole lot of effort. Now you go back to Milwaukee, a team that's had your number. There is no love lost there.
No.
Whatsoever. And now I'll turn it back to you for game 1.
We had Severino starting game 1, and then we're going to go to Manaea in game 2. Severino had a very poor outing in Milwaukee just a week before. You know, the curious thing about the way these seeds worked was that the Mets in the week leading up, if they had swept Milwaukee, they would not have needed to play that doubleheader on Monday. They end up losing 2 out of 3 to Milwaukee, and Severino pitched in Milwaukee and did not pitch well. Severino gets his revenge game. He goes out and doesn't pitch well again. And Severino has a tell. I'm remiss to actually tell you what it is as a Braves fan, but when you see Severino go out and jostle, if not fondle, the rosin bag after practically every pitch, he is not feeling his control. And in the second inning, he starts doing that. Now, the Milwaukee Brewers actually load the bases in the first inning. He gets out of it having only allowed 2 runs. In the second inning, he starts doing that. I'm like, oh, shit. He's already losing his control. I went to the game here in Arizona where the Mets played the D-backs, and that was probably about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and Severino pitched. And I can remember just being focused on him in the mound because he ended up giving up, I believe it was 4 earned runs in 5 innings. And when he's not comfortable, he just can't help but do that. When he's comfortable, he still goes to the rosin bag, but it's maybe once after every 2, 3, 4 pitches. But when he's over there, he's got to pick up the rosin bag. He's got to adjust his hat after every pitch. And this is still on the pitch clock. You know he's not feeling it. So he's not feeling it. So I'm not feeling good. I'm like, shit, this guy's going to have 2 shitty outings against the same team in the same stadium, and we're going to be down 0-1. But what happens? The Mets bats that had carried them to that 25-5 record throughout the course of August and September, they wake up. And against a very capable bullpen, just like they had done in Game 1 on Monday, they start shelling those kids. Hit after hit, run after run. So Severino, I think he only pitched 5 innings. He may not have even gotten through 5. But
through 6.
Okay. So again, Mendoza does something that I love. He knows Severino has it in him to go and pitch 100 pitches and still be effective. And after that beginning that the Mets had, he put Severino back out there, and Severino actually pitches well. I mean, I think he gave up a couple of hits. And again, the Brewers are threatening, but he gets through the inning. He gets through another. And lo and behold, the Mets, I believe, now have all the momentum in that series with the guy who probably has pitched the best over the course of the last couple of months for the Mets is Sean Manaea. I think I'm saying that right. Maybe they pronounce it Manaea. He also had a terrible outing in Milwaukee, so this is a revenge game for him. So a clinching game, you've got Manaea coming up after having not pitched well the last time he pitched in this stadium against this team. I'm optimistic. I feel like he's the kind of competitor that he's going to be looking to have a really good outing. The bats have woken up. And so I think the Mets are going to be a terrible threat to not only the Milwaukee Brewers, but in the event that they win this series, hold on, I should say, I need to have some optimism. That's the Law Mets in me that comes out.
Understand. When
the Mets win the series, they are going to be a threat to either the Dodgers or the Phillies.
You bring up a good point right there. I question, are we reseeding again? We're not reseeding, are we?
You know what? I hate that you just asked me that because my understanding is it's no, but it could be.
Yeah, so there's a bracket. They've got the Phillies next in the bracket. I don't think that we're reseeding again. I don't think that makes sense right now. But I agree with you. I mean, if they can come out strong, and from my understanding, it's Manaea. If they can come out strong tonight and win that game tonight, this goes back to what we've talked about earlier in the season. It's the wild card teams coming in, playing 3 games. You've got the folks with a bye that have 5 days off.
Yep.
Do they get a little restless? You've got a team coming in with momentum. They go to Philadelphia, division rival. You guys split with Philly or took 3 out of 4 against Philly, didn't you?
Yeah, we took 3 out of 4. That's what got us into position.
Recently.
Yeah.
Philly started the season in a way that nobody ever has before. But everybody's got holes in this in the playoffs. But it goes back to what we said. Get in the dance. Get in the dance. Give yourself a chance to do it. And if the Mets can do that and get this momentum, then I agree with you. I think they got a good shot. From a Braves perspective, right now we're in game 2. Matt Fried's on the mound, what feasibly could be his last game ever as a Brave.
Yeah.
His contract's up. He's going to demand, with a year that he had, he's going to demand a big contract. I don't know if the Braves are going to do it. He said in an interview last week that, this is all he's ever known. He loves it here, but, you can win anywhere. Wouldn't surprise me if he goes to the flipping Dodgers. But he's from L.A. Sandy Koufax was his hero. But if the Braves now are backs against the wall again, fortunately you've got your ace on the wild card series roster, right? Max Fried is strong number 2 or a 1B behind Chris Sale.
Yeah.
He has, I think, 3 shutouts this year. If I'm not mistaken, he has at least 2 Maddox games this year where he's got shutouts with less than 100 pitches. And those games just fly. I don't think you're going to do that against San Diego. San Diego's got a lot of studs. They're a tough team.
They are.
You hit it on the head. Going to Milwaukee was the better bet. I don't care how much bad blood there is between the Mets and the Brewers. Going to Milwaukee was your better bet. You don't want to fly 4 hours to San Diego, and you sure as hell don't want to face the Padres. Because that's a team that was built. We've talked about this before. You can't build a culture, but that's the team they built. They don't have a whole lot of homegrown in there, but they built it, and it's working, and they're tough. And Tatis Jr. hits a 440-foot home run last night that, as they illustrated it, looked like a roller coaster going up and coming down.
Yeah.
they're tough, and I gotta have faith. Dare I say, I gotta have faith. But the bats have to do something. Ozuna from the Braves got to do something. How goes Ozuna, so goes the Braves. If he's not on, the Braves don't do anything. If he's hitting, offense gets going. And I don't know what it is about it, but it's gonna be a tough one. If they can do that, they got a shot again tomorrow. I still don't know who they're pitching tomorrow because, again, walking wounded.
Yeah.
Charlie Morton's 40. He's a bullpen guy at this point, and he said he can pitch till he's 45. If he does, he will be a bullpen guy, and he's probably going to be satisfied with that. But I don't think he's a starter again. He can come in and get a good two, 3 strong innings. I think he pitches tonight if all comes to if it comes to it. If it doesn't, Ronaldo Lopez starts tomorrow, which phenomenal year, but they got to get something done tonight first. And if they don't, it's lose and go home. But you hope that they can pull something off and they can get that kind of momentum that the Mets have right now going into it. From your perspective, I dislike the Nets. From your perspective, I'm hoping they win. I dislike the Phillies even more sometimes. So it's going to be a fun series regardless. But I think that the Braves got a shot. I think they got a shot. It depends on how Max pitches tonight. If he's got his stuff, which I think he can, and how do the Padres react? And what do the Braves do against the bats? Michael King last night for the Padres had a sweeper that was starting from 2:00 and going to the Philippines. Nobody could touch it. That thing was sliding off the plate. Nobody could touch it last night. The bats weren't going, but he was on. He was absolutely on last night. You got to tip your hat to him. But Braves got to stop swinging at slop and try to get something done tonight.
You have said this several times on the podcast during our Two Idiots Discuss Sports segments that in baseball it's a unique sport because you're only a day away from a great pitching performance. And you can be a bad team, but you can have a pitcher the next day that comes up and has a great performance and that can propel a team. So you've got the guy on the mound that you want.
Yep.
You just need to hit. And so that's going to be an interesting baseball game because if the Padres pitcher, and I don't know right now who they're pitching. I know they've got a capable staff as well. Excuse me?
I'm chuckling. I know who it is. I'll let you finish.
Well, but I was going to say that could be a 2-hour and 20-minute game if you got two guys who were on, and it's going to come down to maybe 1 or 2 key hits, a key home run. A guy gets a walk and hits a home run, or gives up a home run rather. I see that game being, a 3-2, a 2-1. And again, I don't like the Braves, but for your sake, I hope the Braves can come out on top of that with a pitching performance from Fried that memorializes his legacy as an Atlanta Brave. If this is his last hurrah, you'd love to see him have a great performance, and regardless of whether the Braves win or lose in Game 3, he acquits himself well as, at this point in his career, a lifelong Atlanta Brave.
When he pitched his last game at home on Friday, he got pulled in the 9th inning, and even though he got pulled, didn't get the complete game. It was a great moment. He's walking off the field. You can see him just looking around the stadium, soaking it all in. He's getting a standing ovation, and before he gets to the dugout, he tips his hat to the crowd.
Yeah,
phenomenal moment. I think he's got to have one of those moments. They're going up against Joe Musgrove tonight.
Oh, okay.
A pitcher that I like to call Baby New Year. If you remember from the 2022 season, if not the postseason, Joe Musgrove is pitching against your Metropolitans.
Yeah.
And he's got ears that look like Baby New Year from Rudolph Shiny New Year. Looked like he'd been in an MMA fight. His ears are swollen. There's got to be something there glistening. But Musgrove's pitching tonight. Braves got to hit the ball. You got to hit the ball.
Well, it's given where we are in time. Let's do, if we can, very quickly.
Yep.
5 minutes on what has been a wild American League wild card series, the rise of the AL Central. Given the time that we're recording this, the Mets are going to tip off here, I think, in the next 11 minutes. The Royals have already played. I'm sorry, the Tigers have already played the Astros and won. The Astros are out, correct?
Astros are gone.
And
Astros are gone.
The Orioles have lost their game one in a 1-0 game. So you've got both of the American League teams, the higher seeds, they're potentially going to be out to these American League teams the American League Central teams that at the beginning of the season, no fanfare. It wasn't like there were people talking them up. Hell, I think there was more scuttlebutt about the Twins than there was the Tigers or the Royals. And look what you've got. You've got those two teams, and it goes to your point, and this is where I'm going to kick it off to you. Those teams are fighting to secure a playoff spot at the end of the season. There's no break for them. There's no days off. So they're going somewhere else, having to play their best baseball in the last week or two of the season and carrying that momentum over to their wild card series.
Yep. So as we speak at 7:30 p.m. on the 2nd of October when we're recording, you're right. Tigers have beaten the Astros. Kansas City's up 2-1 going into the top of the ninth. So Baltimore is really close to losing that series. It's going to be interesting to watch if we can get out of here and go flip it on. But a couple of things. I mean, you mentioned the AL Central. All eyes are on the Twins. I don't know if he's been fired yet, but the Twins manager should be. There was a massive collapse over the last month.
Yep.
Tidbits on the Houston-Detroit series. First and foremost, as of August 11th, the Detroit Tigers had a 0.2 chance of making the playoffs. Not 20%, 0.2% chance of making the playoffs. What do? They play their way in. A.J. Hinch, slightly disgraced former manager of said Houston Astros,
yep, takes
his team down to Houston. Now, here's some interesting numbers. Since 2015, the Houston Astros have been in 103 playoff games since 2015. Houston Astros, 103 playoff games since 2015. Detroit Tigers, 0. No games. None games. You've got a team that's got the ultimate experience, right?
Yes.
Astros there every year. Just pencil them in at the beginning of the season. They're going to find their way in. Versus a team that may or may not have lost 100 games last year. I know Kansas City did. Kansas City lost over 100 last year. They made it to the playoffs. And they're about to win a wild card series. You've got Houston that's got 103 games. You've got A.J. Hinch, disgraced manager, going back to Houston. There's a storyline. And all of a sudden, Detroit pulls the upset. So, rise of the AL Central, absolutely. And, it's just good for baseball. I think if you got teams like that, you think Kansas City Royals, you think George Brett for the most part.
That's right.
Right? They lose 100 games last year. They've got a phenomenal turnaround. Detroit Tigers, you think Magnum PI, right? Driving around Hawaii in your Ferrari with your Detroit Tigers hat on. Traditional powerhouse from the 80s.
Yeah, it's been a minute since they've been good.
Absolutely. So it's good to see these in there. I really think it's good for baseball to have that. I want to say diversity, but have those types of teams that have that type of legacy back in the playoffs again. It's going to be a good run. I mean, I think win, lose, or draw with the Braves today. Not draw, but win or lose. I think it's going to be a fun playoff. I don't think there's any one team that has everything lined up and is indestructible. Even though you've got 3 MVP winners on the Dodgers, there are still holes. They got pitching problems.
They do.
I think it's a flip of a coin, and Uncle Mo momentum is gonna prove to rule, I believe, in October, and it's just going to be another fun one.
Well, I am excited to watch the American League, to see these up-and-coming teams take on, particularly the Yankees. I mean, to watch the Houston Astros play the New York Yankees again in the playoffs, you know, not to say that it wouldn't be an interesting series, but we've kind of been there and done that. And like you said, you've got a team that won less than 60 games last year, turning it around. I mean, I have a bad taste about Kansas City because the last time they were good, they beat the Mets in the World Series. But it is nice to see a team that has gone to the heights of winning the World Series less than a decade ago, losing a lot of those free agents because they couldn't pay them. Jose Soler, I'm looking at you, or Jorge Soler. And then through the draft and through a hell of a lot of development, now have a team that is not only winning, but winning in a wild card playoff just a year later. Yeah, it is exciting. And it's so exciting that I'm going to invite you on the podcast for next week. Hopefully we can do it early in the week next week, and we can break down the rest of the playoffs, and then we can do our playoff predictions.
Absolutely. I'm in, my friend. It's always fun to get on. It's always fun to chat. But yeah, let's do it. And you've got about 2 minutes before first pitch. So good luck to your Mets tonight. I will be watching. Let's just say I'll be watching.
You'll be watching in the background. Yeah, I hear you. And let's end this now so we can go and see if the Orioles can pull it out, or if Doc is going to be heartbroken again.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right, talk to you next week.
Patrick.
Act 2, Epilogue.
As we know now, given this podcast is being published on October the 5th, neither the Braves nor the Mets won their fateful games on Wednesday night. The Braves went down to the Padres. Unfortunately, Max Fried did not have a good outing. I believe he actually got hurt, was hit by a line drive and had to leave the game. The Mets had the leading into, I believe, the 8th inning. If not the 7th, it was the 8th. And their reliever, Phil Maton, gave up a couple of runs that the Mets could not recover from. Fortunately, the good guys did come out on top in Game 3 in one of the most memorable games. Besides the one on Monday, you had one on Thursday. Pete Alonso hitting a 3-run home run in the top of the 9th inning to propel the Mets past the Milwaukee Brewers. The Mets now go to Philadelphia, and the Padres now go to Los Angeles. I am coordinating now with Brian his return to the podcast so that we could do additional breakdowns of these series and some predictions, some playoff predictions. So stay tuned for that next week. This is Why Don't Vote, a podcast.